And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Men of Real Estate Show. I'm Ray. Say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
And that is Dan. We're both real estate agents. I'm in Arkansas. Dan's in LA. So depending on which direction you travel, we span the globe. So thank you so much for joining us. The show is global. I mean, we haven't heard Harold in a while, but we are broadcast all over the world. So we have some friends in Italy and Australia. We've had Australia check in. We've had Israel. So, and for those of you who don't know, we are the number 16 news and commentary show in the nation of Tibet. So, no, wait, it's Taiwan. It's
Taiwan. Whatever.
What?
6-1, half dozen the other.
It's terrible. It's a terrible error. All right. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you're checking us out on YouTube or on Facebook, you can actually comment on the show and we can display your comment just like we've done for Mario Flores. He says, "What up, Ray and Dan?" He's checking in on YouTube. "Hey, man, how's it going?" D Jones, she's over on Facebook checking in. She says, "Hey, Beards. Hey, D. Thanks for joining us again." Eric Edge, he said, "Hey, all Delaware here. Thanks for checking in, Eric."
Yeah, and Delaware that's in Europe, right? So that's worldwide. That adds to our, I don't know.
Delaware?
Delaware?
Thanks so much, Eric.
There we go.
And we have some really interesting information. We've got a little today. I would say it's not an article. This is kind of insider information, something that happened to an agent that's one of the Bearded Men of Real Estate contributors. And I've asked him, he's welcome to come on to the show and describe it, but I'm not going to out him because he's a paying member for Zillow. So I'm not going to out him. But I said, "Hey, man, if you want to talk about it, you're more than welcome to talk about it." So we're going to talk about an offer, an iBuyer offer that his client received that was $84,000 over what a legitimate comparable analysis would get.
So that's where that part is where we want feedback on, because that's not crazy. But then we want to kind of talk about what does this mean. So hold those comments and you can jump on, obviously on Clubhouse or YouTube or whatever. We really want to know what do you think that would mean?
What does it mean? What are they trying to do? We're also going to talk about FHA making it easier for students to buy a home with student loan debt, or actually people with student loan debt, just a regular person with student loan debt.
They're like adult renters, remember?
So is it a good thing or bad thing? We're going to talk about that. Mortgage payments are increasing despite the low rates. Existing home sales are dropping. Why? And then homebodies are hampering the housing market. We're talking about that with refinances, mortgage rates higher. There's a CEO that's not worried about the bubble. We'll talk about why. Tesla has a deal with a developer. They're going to be putting solar roofs and or solar roof panels and big batteries and chargers for their electric cars in a development. And then we're going to kind of wrap it all up and tie it up with a bow with an article from Logan, who's joined us on the show in the past. It says, "Existing home sales is unhealthy housing market continues." So we're going to talk and see if it is unhealthy, what is unhealthy about it, and we also want your opinions on that. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Dan, before we get into all these news articles, could you tell everyone what the show is actually all about?
Yeah, I would love to. Now, when Ray and I met here on the interwebs, when did Al Gore create the internet?
Oh, man. That was a while back, but we were right there, right after there. It used to be a Bearded Men of Real Estate Usenet group.
Yeah, it was at CompuServe.gov, I think.
There are still, by the way, Usenet groups going on right now. I'm a member of a couple still.
That's crazy to me. Remember chat rooms? Anyway, Ray and I used to have a chat room, ASL. We would worry about that to go a little old school. But no, when we met, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago here on the interwebs, I had an idea for a show because I am, in fact, a bearded man of real estate. But when I met Ray, I noticed something very interesting about him.
Really, Dan? What's that?
He can rip an onion in half with his bare hands.
That's true. I've actually done that. You're laughing, but I've also ripped a bell pepper. There's several vegetables that have met the ire of these hands that have caught hands, I guess you could say.
Yeah, caught hands from. It would be a smaller list to say. Oh, there goes the puppy. It'd be a smaller list to say what hasn't been ripped in half by those.
That's
hands.
Right. Well, no, here's the backstory on that. I used to own a restaurant, and I could not find the knife to cut an onion in half to then put it on the dicer. And they have this big thing where you just tamp it down and you could dice the whole thing, but you really need the onion to be flat on one side. I could not find the knife. I was tired of what was going on. So I literally dug my gloved hands into the onion, ripped it apart, stuck it on there, sliced the onion, and then because I needed the onion like instantly. And so, you do what you have to do in food service. And that was a weird one. It wasn't the most perfectly diced. I would have to say it's not perfectly ripped in half. It was like, it was disheveled a bit, but as to be expected.
As it would be. Yeah, you wouldn't expect a perfect cut.
That's right.
Mario wants to know if you've ripped a phone book in half.
Pages, just pages, not the whole phone book. I helped the power team. But if you don't know the power team, they would do these feats of strength, and put on these shows and stuff. So I helped the power team back in the day to do setups and stuff and break the ice and roll a metal. I didn't do any of that stuff, but I just helped them do it. So I did set out some phone books for them to rip.
You were on a path to maybe becoming a strongman anyway, but we digress. By the way, if you hate this banter, Ray's going to tell you in a minute where you can skip through all this stuff.
I'll wait till after the banter to tell you how to skip through it.
Exactly. You got to get through the banter to learn how to skip through the banter. But I obviously noticed that Ray's a beautifully bearded man, but he had a layout for a show, and it's the same-ish format that we do today because we've changed it up the last few weeks. But I also noticed that he loves giving value up front to not only his clients, but also to humans in general. So the show's about being more as an agent, but also being more as a human.
Yeah, and the gist of the show is to hopefully inform people on what in the heck is going on in the real estate market so that you can make a better decision about your own investment, or so that you as an agent can guide your clients, or as a lender, or as a title agent, or as an investor, can guide your clients and investors through the process of buying and selling a home, knowing what is happening in the market so you can position yourself well. And hopefully we give you some content ideas. The last couple of weeks, I think we've given out several content ideas that we had one of my agents do. He put the idea in practice and got 6 leads from it. So please stay tuned for that kind of stuff too. And if you have any, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, Dan, are you ready to get this thing on the road?
100%.
Let's do it. All right, so let's talk Zillow. I got a call from a guy. And he's an agent that's contributed to us before and even contributed to us on a little bit of the back end of what was happening in Zillow. And he said he had met with a client. He'd gone over some comparables with them and was about to list their property. They got an offer from Zillow for $84,000 over what his comps suggested. And he's a pretty good agent. It's not like he was just, going by 6-month-old comps. Right. He knows his stuff. And so he's like, this is way out of the market.
How recent was this? Was this in the last few weeks?
Yeah, it was very recent.
So even though the market is crazy, 84 grand is nutty.
In his market, 84 grand was like an outlier. It would be an outlier. They'd be the luckiest sellers in history, I think, in the area. Right. So he called a coach of his who is the number 1 or number 2 agent in a state. And so I'm being real careful with how I'm saying it. So he's the number 1 or number 2 agent in the whole state and a big Zillow flex person. Okay. And they said
not flex,
right? Not flex like me.
Their flex program.
Flex program, right?
Yeah, he doesn't use Zillow to flex on people.
Right. So he said, oh man, I was afraid this would happen, but this is sooner than I anticipated. And he said what he had been hearing through the grapevine is that the traffic was going down on Zillow, which Dan, you kind of looked up some information. Maybe you can find that again and find that. So he said that the traffic was going down on Zillow, or maybe the inquiries were going down, which is harder for us to track, but we can actually check the website traffic. But they were purchasing properties in order to ensure listings on their website so that people would inquire about them. And then they could basically sell those inquiries to real estate agents on the Flex program, or that are paying agents that are paying for the leads. So basically, this is like a store buying inventory, and then putting that inventory in their store, so people have to come to their store for that inventory. I'm not shocked by this at all. As a matter of fact, I think a couple of months ago, we talked about the Zillow offers being where you could click a 1-button click and you could sell your home for the Zestimate price in I think it was 20 different markets. It was over 500,000 homes that were available for this. Yeah. And the newscaster, if you remember when we discussed this article, the newscaster said, how much are you guys making on the flip? And the guy that was chief analytics officer of some sort was like, he was stuttering and stammering and basically said, we're not really focused on what we're making off the flip. And I said, this is like somebody buying a billboard and then selling the leads off of that to agents that are paying them referral fees.
Right.
And there were some comments we got. Some people said, that's crazy talk. They're trying to make money on the flip. Flip is a business. I said, no, it's not their business. It is
a business, but not their business.
Yeah, it's just a model to be able to sell those leads to real estate agents. So let's say they go 84K over, but then they sell 20 leads to real estate agents off of that then pay them $5,000 a piece.
Right.
Well, they're in the money.
For easy. Not much work for one listing, and then that listing can sell, so they can take the loss on it.
Yep. And
then they write it up as, in their quarterly statement as, no, we made all this money, but we have a net loss of 327 million.
yeah, which is whatever. One of the things we were talking about all the net losses attributed to the iBuyers. So I wanted to put that out
cost
there.
Of business.
Part of the reason of putting that out there is I wanted to spur on the discussion either now or in the BMORE contributors chat or in just a chat later. If you want to reach out to me personally or Dan personally, like this guy did, I want to know if that's happening in your market. If you guys are kind of keeping tabs on that. I know Glenda Baker is keeping tabs on before she lists a property, what the Zestimate is, as she lists the property, what the Zestimate is, and then every day after that. And she's tracking the activity on those estimates too, because the Zillow Flex program and Zillow agents are in her marketplace. So it's just interesting information. I personally don't have anything hugely negative against Zillow. I think it's just a different business model. Some people are like, they're out to get us and replace us. I think they're only ever going to make up 5 to 10% of the marketplace. That leaves 90% of the marketplace for me to play in. So I don't know. I think the biggest concern, if I was concerned, would be an investor looking for a quick flip. That's going to be much harder to come by these days than it was previously.
Yeah, and as I was going through articles for this week, there was one. It's not. I don't think it was show worthy. I didn't even bring it up. We do a pre-show thing on Clubhouse every Tuesday, by the way, usually around noonish my time. So yeah, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. on the Cheese Toast and 2 o'clock for Ray. But yesterday was about 2:30 his time. But I saw one, and there's less and less flips going now because the margins are smaller and smaller. And I've sold a couple this year to investors, pretty beat up homes that, should have gone to investors, but their margins, they had to sacrifice a lot, instead of, just, hey, we'll do a 3-day inspection period, and then maybe we'll try to get the price back through a $5,000 credit or something. They're just like, okay, whatever's wrong with it, I'm good with it. And then they're just kind of taking what they can. One of them turned it into a rental. So I thought that was a smart move because he's, maybe he'll sell it down the road. But it's a rental for now. And then maybe he can sell it later, but now he's getting his money back kind of, but the margins are less. So that article kind of said there's less and less investors happening right now because the margins are so small, but Zillow doesn't care about that. So they're just buying it. They're buying billboards essentially. These houses are their billboards, and they get to put a sign out in front. Think about that. I
was just gonna say that it's kind of the same as these real estate agents that'll take your $500,000 house and list it at $900,000 because they get the sign in the yard, and it's a free billboard for them. If
it's out there for
marketing.
6 months or whatever the term of that contract is, and Zillow gets, not only do they get to sell these leads through any calls they get on it, they get to sell them to agents. They also get to put a sign out front, and then that's more Zillow, and then people go over to Zillow. So I think it's a no-brainer for them. I don't agree with it, but I think it's a no-brainer for them with seemingly endless money.
It's a different mindset for the market. So we have Zillow being added to the buyer pool. Another group that may be added to the buyer pool is people with student loan debt. So the FHA is easing requirements for home buyers to buy a home with student loans. And we've talked a little bit about the increase in buyers and if that was good or bad. We talked about the thing that the government's deciding. I don't know if it ever went through, but this credit this $15,000, I think it was, credit for people that are looking to buy a home. And there also was one that was supposed to target first generation home buyers. I don't know
there's grants
or changed. So,
and then there's credits, and then there's tax breaks, but it's all for the buy side pretty much.
It's all for the buy side, and generally those that are at the bottom half to 1/3 of the market. First time home buyers is probably not out there buying luxury. Well, they might, but it's not going to be the majority of the home buyers. So this one is on the Realtor Magazine website. And I guess, are they still doing the print version of that? I haven't gotten one in a while.
I've been on the cover. It's weird you haven't gotten it because I've been on the cover every month this year.
Oh, really? Yeah, there you go. It's too bad no one reads print. All right. So last summer, NAR. So this is NAR joined a coalition of roughly 20 housing groups in calling on leadership, Department of Housing and Urban Development, FHA, to enact changes to its underwriting processes or policies regarding the calculation of borrowers' student loan debt. The issue of student loan debt has been increased in significance and attention in NAR over the last several years, as these burdens had a significant lasting impact on America's next generation of homebuyers. In fact, HUD has reported that more than 80% of FHA insured mortgages for first-time home buyers, while the FHA estimates that more than 45% of these borrowers also had student loan debt. Here's a quote from the HUD Secretary, Marcia Fudge. I'm hungry. Home ownership is the cornerstone of the American dream and the best way to build generational wealth. I'm proud that the FHA is taking action to make it easier for borrowers with student loan debt to qualify for federally insured mortgage. This new policy will make a big difference in individuals through our nation as we step in to mandate and promote equity and opportunity for home ownership. All right.
Mandate.
So here's a question. Is this a good thing? Dan, which side do you want to take? The good side, or I could be devil's advocate on it.
I could take the bad side.
You want to take the bad side? Okay, then I'm going to take the good side. All right, Dan. We know that wealth is built through home ownership. So even though someone may have copious amounts of student loan debt, if they can get into a situation in which they own the home, it should spur wealth creation through the home ownership. What say you?
So now we're going to sidestep the entire conversation about forgiving student loan debt. We're going to sidestep that.
And should we also sidestep the entire conversation about the inflated cost college and how it's probably not worth what people are paying?
Right. We're going to sidestep all of that stuff.
Both of that. Okay. All right. Good.
What it is for this conversation is I wanted a service and I had to get a loan for it. And now I have to pay it back. That's the bare bones part of this conversation, right?
Yep.
So now, but I've gone through my 4 years and let's say I've gotten my job and now I need to pay all that back. Now, if I buy a house, and I think in one of the articles, I don't know if we're going to touch on it or not, but the average mortgage now is just under $1,200 a month. I believe it's gone up to that. I think we're going to hit on that in one of the articles, Ray.
Yep.
So now if my student loan debt is $200 a month, now if I'm being essentially forgiven that little chunk and able to buy the home to build my wealth.
Forgiven off of your debt to income ratio.
Yeah, it's off the DTI. So now where's that $200 a month going, and where's my student loan debt getting paid down? So yes, I'm building equity, and I'm building equity, but it's locked into my house. So unless I sell my house, I can't then build that or take that wealth and pay down my student loan debts. Because if I'm really close on my ratios, and then you say, hey, I'll forgive this part of your what goes out every month so you can buy a home, that's great. But how's that money going to come back to pay down my student loan debts?
Dan, the government is the one who's creating this debt to income ratio out of thin air. It's really not based on much of anything, is it?
Well, it's based on the ability to pay back your debt, right? So
says who?
Well, says the lender. The lender
Shouldn't
wants their
I
money
be
back.
able to buy whatever house I want and enter into whatever debt I want, Dan?
We do live in a free country,
who will
so yes.
buy the loan.
I feel like you're going hard left on this.
Okay, so the logical extent of the conversation, I think, kind of Dan hit the nail on the head there. And so did D Jones in the comments. She said, "Should they be in more debt?" So there is a debt to income ratio that was calculated somehow, and I really don't have the history of the calculation of the debt to income ratio,
and
but
48% or something right now. 46.
Yeah, it does change. At one point, I think it was 54 for some borrowers in different cases.
And it might change per lender, right?
Yeah. So I think what the mindset is that having a student loan should benefit you in the marketplace to allow you to earn a higher income moving forward. Should. And because
the jobs are available.
Right. And because you have the student loan and hopefully a degree to go with it, you should be able to also get a higher paying job on average, which means you are probably more responsible than the average. I'm just speaking in broad general terms of what they're saying with the incentive from this financing, which should mean that you're probably more responsible to both pay back your loans and make more money. So giving you the opportunity to have a good debt is what finance people love to call it in owning a home, is one in which the equity should increase over time through appreciation. There's only been 2 times in history where it didn't through a recession. There's only been 1 10-year period in history where your home value did not increase, and that was during the big crash that we had. So it seems like that would be a good investment for a bank to be able to look at someone and say, well, they have debt to income ratio. It's pretty high, but hey, they have a ton of debt because they're becoming a doctor. And because of all this debt, we know that they're going to get paid really well once they graduate or once they get all their jobs lined up. So because of that phenomenal job that they're going to have and the job security, because there's not enough doctors, then we think as a bank, we're going to give them a loan. Even though they have 12 years of like medical school debt. So I think that's a lot. Yeah, I think that's kind of the purpose. And so I like it. But Dan, can you tell me if it's good or bad right now to have an influx of available buyers into a marketplace with tight inventory?
Bad.
Would it? Ding, ding, ding.
We don't need more buyers.
Wouldn't that increase the price of that they will have to pay for these homes, and further we'll see those home price gains instead of slowing, they're just going to keep going up, won't they?
Right. And then even though interest rates are low, Ray, their mortgages are still going to go up because prices are now increasing faster than mortgage rates are staying low. Segue. We've done it.
Great job not mentioning the segue, Dan.
I can't help it. When they're good, they're good.
That is a good one. So, and you guys feel free, if you're in Clubhouse and you want to comment on this, flash your mic. Hopefully producer Matt will see you, or you can raise your hand and come up. But we do want to know, like, do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea? I think overall it's probably a good idea, but maybe they should also say once you've graduated and can show you have a degree. Because what about the guy that goes to college for 6-7 years, doesn't have a degree? Well, I guess you have to have the job. You have to have the income to get the loan in the first place, right? So you're going to have some kind of job. But what about the guy that never gets the degree? Like that kind of, it's not.
But your degree should be in what you went to school for or something. You know what I'm saying? So, but going back to it, I'm still playing devil's advocate. But overall, yes, I think it's a great idea. But during a time when we don't need more buyers, I think it's a little misdirected, I'll say. And I'm going to say it again. I think I say it pretty much every week on the show now. We need some sort of incentive to get these sellers off the fence, which we do have an article later that we're going to kind of hit on that. We can get that discussion going.
Mike Elizabeth Rodell says, but if the investors that are buying up these junk ratio loans are really from Zillow, then that loss they take. Oh, she's talking about the previous article. Sorry about that. I thought you were talking about the investors that are buying.
I know. I was trying to read it that way.
Yeah. I see what you're saying now. All right. So Mario Flores says, hey, Ray, I got some interesting facts about the Zillow situation I can send you later and possibly talk about next week. Okay, Mario. That's what I'm talking about.
Boom. Teaser for next week, people.
Mike Elizabeth Riddell says, you already have doctor, lawyer, loan programs. Yes, there are bank programs, but there's nothing nationally recognized, which that would be the chain here. And Eric Edge says, invite, please. Hey, Eric, are you in Clubhouse? Where do you want to invite?
I think that's what he means.
Oh, you know what? I should post that then.
I think he means to Clubhouse.
I'll see if I can post the invite. So I'm in the Clubhouse room now. We're also a part of the Real Estate Networking Club, by the way. So if you are in Clubhouse and not following the Real Estate Networking Club, there's this little greenhouse at the top. Be sure you click that and follow the club, because there's a lot of cool rooms. Justin has one. He's in the house now. He's got one called Practical Tactical, which I absolutely love. So I'm trying to figure out. There's no way. Share room. There it is.
He's got a cool. Justin has a cool picture too.
Yes.
There's all these professional pictures, and then there's mine. If you don't follow me in Clubhouse, you need to, because my pictures are never professional.
There you go. Matthew Clayton, producer Matt, just shared the Clubhouse thing in the Facebook. So there you go. There's a link. Eric, join the Clubhouse conversation. Come on up. D. Jones said, wait, are they checking the freaking degree in underwriting?
Well, that's what I want to know.
That's a good, I don't know. That's a good question. That's one of the questions I had for this student loan program.
Kind of that. It would fall into that slippery slope thing where we were saying, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we talked about this type of buyer can qualify, but you can't make more than this, and it would help the investor. But then the investor would have to ask, okay, how much do you make a year? And then what if they choose, that offer over someone that makes just higher than the median income in the area? But I don't know. Again, I'm all for helping people buy houses, obviously, but in a time where we are struggling to get more listings on the market and to get more sellers to sell, this is really, really the wrong time.
Eric, I just sent you a link, and everyone in the comments, that includes the invite to join Clubhouse and the Real Estate Networking Club.
Dude, that's legit. You can send the room and an invite, dude. Clubhouse is good. I'm happy that I'm part of Clubhouse now.
Okay, so let's talk about mortgage rates, mortgage payments that are increasing despite the low rates. So higher home prices are having significant impact on housing affordability, regardless of the historic low rates. Incomes are coming down from recent highs, and declining incomes with higher home prices is not a good combination for the potential home buyer. That's Michael Hyman. He's a research data specialist for NAR. What, Dan? What's that face for? Oh, sorry. Dan's face caught me. Sorry about that. The median family income.
I read the article, but I didn't see his name.
All right. So the median family income, it is down in April to 88,000. It was up in March to 95,000. And then down in February, 85,000. So I'm a child, there so you can see.
I'm like a teenager. All
right. So the monthly mortgage payment. Hey, producer Matt, show this chart. Monthly mortgage payment jumped to $1,184. A year ago, it averaged $1,020.
So $160 a month. That's kind of what in the last article. That's what I was saying. Is if you have $200 going out a month, and then your monthly payment just jumped essentially year over year, $164. That's a $364 swing, and they're forgiving part of that. But then where's that 200 going to come from, kind of thing,
Yeah, it's a 16% increase year over year. The annual mortgage payment as a percentage of income also rose 16%. So it's a percentage of your income.
Yeah, we had this discussion yesterday on the what do we call that? The pre-show.
Show.
Yeah, the pre-show show that we do every week. Well, for 2 weeks we've done it on Clubhouse. But I read this whole article today, and I understand it much better. And if you read up just a little bit in that article, you'll see that it says incomes have actually trended down. Like household incomes have gone down a little bit. So when you read that, 16% of household incomes is their mortgage payment, up from 13.4% or whatever, that's a bad trend. Incomes are going down, but your mortgage payment is going up.
Right.
That's a bad trend. Now that I've read the full article.
Right. Yeah. That's what we were kind of confused about yesterday.
Yeah, so that clarified it quite clearly in my head compared to yesterday. But that's a bad trend. If incomes are going down a little bit, but mortgage payments are going up, that's a. It's not. We'll get into it. I don't want to do a segue too early into this article, but I don't think it's trending somewhere dangerous. I don't.
Well, and we've talked about several times that one of the reasons why the affordability is getting worse is because there's just not that much for sale compared to what's needed on the market. And that was one of the reasons why existing home sales in May dropped for the fourth straight month. This article is from CNBC. It says the sales of existing homes in May dropped for the fourth straight month due to very low supply of homes on the market. Existing homes fell 0.9% last month from April to a seasonally adjusted annualized rate of 5.8 million units, according to the National Association of Realtors. 5.8 million rate is modestly above pre-pandemic levels. Sales were 44.6% higher than a year earlier, but that comparison is skewed massively given the housing market basically shut down for 2 months. Yeah, it did shut down, but it was also kind of cooking by this time as well.
Yeah, we're to the point where it started going.
Yeah, I think in April, there was a big U that happened until halfway through May, and then bam, everything shot off like a rocket, and it hasn't slowed down since. So I would agree that it may be a little higher, but not. I wouldn't say much. I wouldn't say it's skewed much. If anything, you would think that there would be like 2 months of buyers jumping into the market that couldn't for that 1 month they were out. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's so skewed right now. These numbers are in May. So if people were back in it, we'll see what happens next month. If by next month it's back down to like 20%, then I think you could say it's skewed higher. But if it continues to go up, that's real interesting.
Well, if you keep going on the article, it'll say right now there's just 1.2. Well, at the end of May, 1.23 million homes were for sale at the end of last month. That's a 20.6% drop from a year earlier.
Interesting. So there were more homes for sale last year.
Yeah, and a 20% drop.
Even though it didn't feel that way.
It didn't feel that way because remember we were like, wait, how are you going to sell? How are we going to show homes? How are we going to
people like Colin JJ Cameron, who I don't know if he's listening right now or not, but he was, the Pennsylvania agents were considered non-essential. They couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So Lawrence Yoon, he's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, says that sales are essentially returning to pre-pandemic activity. Lack of inventory continues to be the overwhelming factor holding back home sales, but falling affordability is simply squeezing some first-time home buyers out of the market, which is what we were just talking about with the student loan thing. If suddenly a lot of people with higher debt to income ratios can now enter the market and purchase, it's not going to put any less pressure on buyers currently in the market looking for a house.
There's still not enough listings.
It's the wrong relief. The housing market should see some relief, but maybe it's on the builder side so they could build faster. Maybe it's changing some rules regarding the FHA loan so people aren't stuck with an appraisal for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into it later, but why not allow people to transfer their tax base unlimited times and, raise, because instead of lowering the capital gains, raise the amount so people can walk with more money. Like what would happen if you I'm about to go off on a tangent, but what would happen if you let all these people walk with more money? They would either buy another house, and if they do, they would put that money back into the economy. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean,
it seems like it.
I don't know. I'm slowly getting closer and closer. Just Ray and I are going to run for something. We're going to just run for it. We're going to do it.
I'm going to be running for cover. That's what I'm running for.
Yeah.
Sales decline in every geographical area except the Midwest, where home prices are lowest.
Yeah.
Mortgage rates fell sharply in April. Sales numbers for newly built homes, they dropped 6% in April. And then this is George Ratiu. He's a senior economist.
I never know how to say his name. Ratiu.
I like Ratatouille, but I know that's in it. With 4 consecutive monthly declines in existing home sales, May's sales activity points to a potential moderation in growth for the remainder of 2021, as inflation is weighing on consumers' budgets and the Federal Reserve indicating it may pull back on its monetary easing sooner than anticipated. Will it? Will it? Interest rates and high prices will keep affordability front and center for buyers.
And then there's one more stat I wanted to go through. So very low inventory, obviously amid high demand, continues to fuel the extraordinary price increases. The median price of an existing home in May was $350,000, just over. And that is a 23.6% increase compared with May 2020. And that's the highest median price ever recorded. Remember, nationally. And that's a 23.6% increase from a year ago. So yay for sellers if they would sell, but yeah.
Yeah, for real. Jeff Reagan says we also have a cap on interest rate write-offs now too, right? With that last tax plan implemented. Jeff, to be honest, I have no clue. But I know there's probably a BMORE contributor out there who does know the answer. So do we have a cap on interest rate write-offs now?
By the way, no cap means I'm not lying nowadays for the young ones.
Yeah. Does that?
Yeah.
Oh, because I've seen people say cap, and cap means
lying.
You are lying. Where's that? Yeah. Where's the origin of this? What does that mean?
It's a whole thing. I went down a wormhole the other day Clanton Beardless can probably describe it better than I. So anyway, we also have a cap. I think now I'm thinking like a flipping, I don't even know, what is he called? He's an exennial. I don't know what he is.
Yeah. What are you, Matthew? All right. So I got no hands in Clubhouse. So I'm going to keep going here. Let me refresh. Sometimes I can refresh and see hands.
Well, we've seen
your hands.
No, we've read the article. I don't recall. He's a Zoomer. There you go.
Recall.
Okay, Zoomer. We've done there you go. No cap. We've covered that article before. I think it's anything over 10K, they can't write it off. Something like that. I forget exact, but
Yeah,
I think you're right, Jeff.
Existing home sales in May dropped for the fourth. Did I just read this? Yeah, I did.
Yep.
Did I just read that, or was that in? Wait, hang on.
Existing home sales drop
for
fourth straight month and squeezes buyers. Yes.
All right. So homebodies. So speaking of lack of inventory, the producers just set this up massively for us. So this article is from imminent. Homebodies are hampering the housing market potential by not selling. Homeowners with low mortgage rates and seniors choosing to age in place aren't eager to sell, according to a new analyst by First American Financial Corp. Homebodies. So these are homeowners that don't want to give up their rock bottom mortgage rates and seniors that choose to live in place. Dan, I know you probably looked into this, but according to the last numbers from National Association of Realtors, existing homes, we already read that, 5.8 million.
Yep.
An annualized real of 6.34 million last month. So this quote is from First American chief economist Mark Fleming. He said, "You can't buy what's not for sale. And the homebodies don't seem ready to relieve the supply pressure, keeping a lid on the market for potential growth." And there's a nice chart, producer Matt, if you want to show the chart. So Dan, what's going on here? Give me the Dan a phrase, if you will.
You want me to Dan a phrase it?
Yeah, please.
So, well, that's, what we're talking about, because I keep talking about, I think in our last two prediction shows, at the end of the year, we do prediction shows.
We do.
We guess. We were wildly incorrect at the end of last year. No, 2019 going into 2020, we were wildly incorrect. But Pete Thorpe had a very, very good prediction that was dead on. If you didn't watch that, go back and watch that show. But I've been talking about this silver wave. It's going to happen. Now, it's not it's not just going to happen all at once. I would hope that would happen, that the floodgates would burst and a bunch of boomers, a bunch of elderly people would sell their homes. But it was more kind of predicted to happen over the course of 10 years. But what's happening is they're choosing to age in place, meaning they're choosing to stay in the home, because what it seemed, and Ray's been in this business a lot longer than I have, but what it used to seem like is, kids get older, you're 55, 65 years old. Kids are now out of the house. You got all those stairs. You got that big house to clean. Now you're going to right size. Now you're going to change, exchange your bigger home for a smaller home. But Ray had an opposing story that he can get into in a second, but that's kind of what it was. And then they kind of take advantage of all that equity they built over the 30 years they were there. They built their family, and then they go buy a small condo somewhere, then they go travel. Or they, just that becomes whatever the equity that they cashed out on, that becomes their retirement. But that's not happening. They're staying in place. They're choosing to age in place. And now I don't know, maybe it's now because they don't want to go start over and start a new place. All the family's comfortable coming to that house. If the grandparents are here in California, they travel here a few times a year and hang out. And they have the big house and they're fine with keeping that, but they're choosing to stay in place, except for your sellers that did the opposite, Ray. And I find it very interesting that it's with as high as much money as these sellers have made just in the last year alone, even more than that, the last 6 months alone, they're not choosing to cash out. And kind of, it's extremely interesting to me.
Yeah, and the chart that Matt was showing says the house buying power fueled market potential in May. So house buying power, it's basically showing two charts, or three charts really. The average 10-year length, how long people are staying in their home, potential home sales, and then the house buying power. The average 10-year length is it really up to 10.6 years?
I think that's years. Yeah.
That's long. So for context, when I was in real estate in 2006 and 7, I was an assistant in 6. I got licensed in 7. People are moving on average every 2 to 3 years during that time period. So then what they're saying is a lot of people are choosing to age in place by staying there up to 10 years. And what's funny is we even had the discussion the other day that maybe we wouldn't sell our house for a long time, but instead would buy, a couple of vacation homes in places we like to go to, some on the beach, some in the mountains. And instead of worrying about a bigger house where we are now, buy houses that we want to go to and spend more time at around the country or around the world. And maybe a lot of people are doing that. But you mentioned a couple of anecdotal stories that I've had where people were buying a house, the baby boomer generation, not aging in place. They were buying another house, selling where they were. And instead of getting normally people used to downsize, when the last kid graduates college or high school, then mom and dad go get a smaller house.
They go to the ranch style, all single story with maybe a little more land, but smaller house.
And they sell their 4 or 5 bedroom and give that up or their big 3 bedroom with a bonus and give that up to another family that's coming in there. Right. Well, these people were buying a 4 or 5 bedroom home. And that was how they right sized instead of downsized.
They went bigger.
And I asked them kind of what they were looking for in the buyer interview, and basically they wanted a place where they could basically live downstairs and would have a couple extra rooms, but then have, whenever the family came over, when all their kids and grandkids, and they would all have rooms to stay in. And during the pre-show show yesterday, there was some discussion of, I wonder, I think maybe Matt or Kelly, I can't remember who it was saying maybe that is, it was Andy Rose. Andy Rose has thorn. He was saying maybe that is because the pandy that happened, and when people couldn't go anywhere or couldn't leave anywhere, people are now wanting a house where everyone can come to them. So I think you have two situations. You may have people aging in place with those bigger homes because they know that when their family wants to come into town, they already have a place for them because their kids grew up there. So they have a room for every kid. And now that kid can just kind of return to their room. Patrick Ellis Home Inspection says, how dare them wanting to stay in their current home? I agree. Melissa Mara says, I'm getting a story from a buyer right now about gangsters and Italian food in Philly. What is this day? Yeah, I don't even know, but thanks for sharing. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe the reason why my people were moving and why a lot of people are aging in place are the same. They already have space for their family, and they want their family to be able to come and visit to them, kind of like what you were saying.
That's kind of, what I was saying is the families are used to traveling here or coming back from college or whatever it is, just to the home. And, I got to go back to it. It's just interesting that all of this equity they can build. I think I've mentioned it, my dad, Norm, we all know Norm. He's on here lurking. He's the only lurker that's allowed. But, in the last, 45, 46 years, he's built some pretty good equity. And now I agree with what Norm's doing. He's in an amazing place. Never leave that spot. It's too good to be true almost. But I do find it's interesting, especially getting that average staying in their homes getting over 10 years now. And there is one more stat. Now it's kind of an older stat, but there's this is, let's see, I don't know who said this. It references Fleming, but I don't know who Fleming is.
Mark Fleming.
Mark Fleming. He's the chief economist. So he described a 2019 study from Freddie Mac that shows if seniors and adults born between 1931 and 1959, that's when I was born, behaved like earlier generations, they would have released nearly 1.6 million additional housing units to the market by 2018. So obviously a little older of a study, but they're continuing to age in place. So imagine if that were just to start loosening it up. I mean, 1.8 million, imagine what that would do. Not only would they still take advantage of a very, and I read another article, it says, extremely hot market is now a hot market. So it is trending towards, cooling off a little bit, but imagine if they all took advantage of that and helped all these buyers that are taking advantage of all these buyer programs. I mean,
they would only help the buyers if they're in the bottom 1/3 of the market. Otherwise, they're going to be buying another property in the bottom 1/3 of the market because they're quote unquote right sizing, generally going smaller, right? And so if they do move from their big house, it does give some relief to the middle market, but that bottom 1/3 now has even more competition, and that's where everyone's failing because builders aren't building in that. They're not building in that price range.
Yeah, and there you go. That's kind of a point.
Cordell said, but those older folks can't afford nursing homes for the cost of new homes on fixed income.
Right.
Yeah, and the only way to relieve the housing inventory is if they left their house and went to an assisted living or some kind of project.
Didn't try to buy another one, right?
Yeah, Melissa Mars said, my mom would love to downsize, but she doesn't want to bring my brother with her. Yeah, maybe that's kind of why they're aging in place, because they still have those millennials at home. So if they are deciding to age in place, a big popular thing that they probably did last year and maybe are doing this year is refinancing. So the rates did drop temporarily to the lowest level in a month. And when they did, refis again shot through the roof. So the total application volume rose 4.2% last week from the previous week. This article is from CNBC. They said after 3 straight weeks of declines, mortgage demand came crawling back thanks to a drop in interest rates. Refinances led the gains, rising 6% for the week. They're still 22% lower for the same week a year ago. The refinances share mortgage activity increase. Let me not gloss over that number. They were 22% lower than the same week 1 year ago. So if you recall, whenever the pandy happened and rates tanked and everyone was refinancing, it got so bad that there were some banks increasing their interest rates on new purchase applications
and tightening their guidelines,
and tightening the lending constraints so that they can manage the number of clients they were servicing for refi. So it is 22% lower than the same week a year ago, but I don't, that may be like kind of just a normal level. Refinance share on mortgage activity increased 61% of total applications. Let's talk about applications to purchase. They increased 2% for the week, but they were still 17% lower than a year ago.
That's a big one to me. So while we were figuring out what this market is, it's still lower. Remember, applications to purchase, not closes, not new contracts. Applications to purchase lower than a year ago when we didn't know what the market was. Is that good or bad? Or is it just nothing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a neutral position, I guess.
I mean, it's good that there's less buyers because there's not enough inventory.
Yeah, it depends on what side of the coin you're on.
But does this all lead to the unhealthy housing market? Because, are we hurtling towards an unhealthy housing market?
Well, one of the things that can make the whole situation unhealthy is if inflation increases and unemployment increases. But what we've seen is a decrease in unemployment. And now Fed advisors are shrugging off Fed's inflation and interest rate forecast. So this article again is from CNBC. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday said it expects to raise interest rates more quickly than previously anticipated. The central bank's inflation forecast for the year also jumped sharply. Financial advisors don't think news amounts to much for clients. So throughout this little article, and we also have another article. Let me just read you the headline of the second one here. The second one says, oh, actually, that's the same one. Okay. Good on me, just posting the same story.
So I went through that one, by the way, and I literally read the exact. I was like comparing and contrasting the two links. I'm like, that's the same link.
Same link, just different ads. So so basically, the whole article talks about the inflation forecast going up, the projections 3.4% from its prior 2.4% estimate. When that happens, so I've said this before, and you can Google Ray Ellen, ELLEN, and Fed, FED, and you'll see a video I put on YouTube or Facebook that talked about the two-part mandate for the Fed. I mean, they do other stuff too, but there's a major two-part mandate. And one of them is to be sure inflation doesn't happen and to ensure full employment. As we approach full employment, which is 4 to 6%, depending on the administration and the media, as we approach the full employment, then the rates have to start to increase, because then you have people making money. And so whenever people make money or borrow the money, they're going to go buy stuff. They don't just borrow money and hang on to it. Anytime they buy stuff, that means that the producers have to produce more of that stuff. And we all know, not only is there a shortage of housing inventory, but Chick-fil-A ran out of sauce. I mean, this is like a big deal.
Wait, what?
So, you didn't hear about this?
No.
Oh, it's like weeks. I don't even know if it's relieved now, but Chick-fil-A ran out of Chick-fil-A sauce and people are panicking. So what
I don't get their Chick-fil-A sauce though. So
that's so good. It's so good. Once you try it, you won't go back.
No, I know I do like it, but they have really good ranch and they have really good buffalo. If you don't like the buffalo, their buffalo is amazing. Sorry.
So, and there've been other things, wood, lumber. There've been other things that are also strained on inventory.
Appliances.
Appliances. And part of that inventory strain shows that unless interest rates are increased and it's no longer attractive for banks to loan to the average consumer, they want to do interbank loans, right? Whenever that happens, it pulls money technically out of the economy. People buy less stuff and lets producers keep their prices low. If there were still more orders for these producers and they couldn't meet the demand, they would raise their prices so that demand would slow down a little bit and they could catch up. That price increase is what inflation is. So the Fed has this delicate balance between maintaining full employment by giving businesses and people the money they need to operate and hire people, and keeping those rates high enough to where people don't buy too much stuff and strain the producers who now have to raise prices. So there's really no mention about the unemployment rate. So we looked it up, and there's no mention in the article about it.
It's down.
In the article, it's down to 5.8%. So it's down from the last time it was announced was like 6.1. I think last time Dan and I looked at it, it was hovering in the mid sixes. So it continues to go down and continues to recover even after the pandy. So the article is a good one. I encourage you to read up on it. Dan, did you have anything else to add about it?
No, not really. I think you hit on all the points that I had. Just let's see.
They think the Fed's notion. So advisors agreed with the Fed's notion of rising prices being short-lived rather than a mainstay.
Yeah,
cost
and
pressures, supply chain issues, and pent-up demand from consumers who spent much of the last 15 months indoors are likely to wane.
And so it mentions. I think part of the reason they shrugged it off because it mentions rate hikes may start in 2023. The Fed said in March it didn't expect an increase till at least 2024. None of this really impacts what people are going to be doing in the next 6 months. And that's Lee Baker, certified financial planner and owner of Apex Financial Services. So for most clients, candidly, it's not a big deal. That's all from the quote from him. So I think it's we're way ahead of any major increases. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing says they're going to stay in the mid threes for the next 3 years.
So does this mean that there's going to be a bubble crash and that's why they're not worried about it?
So it's maybe an unhealthy market.
Could be an unhealthy market. Well, in an article on CNBC, Dallas Turner said inflation homes. What a Freudian slip.
That's a slip there.
Invitation Homes CEO says he's not worried about a housing bubble despite price spikes. Here's why. So he said in an interview on Squawk on the Street, the supply chain demand dynamics that have contributed to the feverish market conditions are unlikely to change drastically overnight. That fact combined with a tighter mortgage lending standards instituted after the 2008 crash led Tanner to believe that the housing market is in solid shape. As a result, he said he's not concerned about acquiring new properties for his Texas-based company, which rents single-family homes. So he said, I would expect that home prices stay relatively stable, if not continue to grow in value for the homeowners in the country. But we'll find our ways to pick our spots, whether through partnerships with builders or ability to buy one-offs. We view the housing environment overall as extremely healthy. So there you go. There's an investor saying with his company, I don't see that it's an issue, and they're still finding ways to make money investing in properties for rent. I just got 2 or 3 inquiries this week about investors looking for rentals in our area. So I don't see that stemming or taming the market. Investors aren't afraid to buy. Someone asked the question, and that would be a great question for you to post on Instagram or Facebook. Here's your lead generation tool. Are real estate prices so high that you shouldn't invest? And answering that question for a lot of investors would go a long way. And this from, I think his name's Dallas Tanner. Did I say that? Yeah, CEO Dallas Tanner. That has some good resources to rebut those claims that it's too high priced right now to invest in property.
Well, we touched on it earlier for like flips, maybe the return isn't there right away, but to refurb something, if you're just refurbing it to make it a rental, you don't have to go all in as much as you would to if you're trying to make a 10 out of 10 home to put it on the market to net your highest profit. But just to rehab something lightly and turn it into a rental, I think it's a no-brainer. I don't know if, like, is there ever a time where prices are too high to not buy a long-term rental? Well,
usually when those home prices are high, so are the rents.
Right.
He said you have this wave of millennials coming our way with tens of millions of people looking for housing. Tanner said. So you have to start to think about, we would see a decrease in either home purchasing or home leasing. We just don't see it. He said sees a need for more quality, affordable housing across all categories, which is what we said, the bottom 1/3 of the market. So he doesn't see a bubble. If you're in the chat or you're in Clubhouse and you think there is going to be a bubble or a bubble bursting, be sure to raise your hand. We'll get to you and ask you about that question.
He does also say kind of the same thing we've been saying on the show for, a year or so, year and a half about, is there going to be a bubble? Is there going to be a crash? But same thing we've been saying, tighter mortgage lending standards instituted after 2008 crash led him to believe that the housing market is in solid shape. As a result, he's not concerned about acquiring new properties there you go. So, and that's just the thing. I don't know if it can crash. Is a crash the same as a burst?
Technically, I think it's all the 60% down. I think that's what it is. Melissa Mars says she has a guy picking up 2 rental properties now. Not millennial friendly, though. The 55 plus community.
Okay, so yeah, that's how you should put it. If you can't advertise 55 plus, you put not millennial friendly.
Speaking of millennials and what they're looking for, solar, alternative energy sources, and maybe Tesla. So Tesla.
By the way, there's a little bit of a conspiracy theory going on here in our private chat. If you didn't see, Ray.
I didn't. I'll have to take a look. Tesla signs a deal with a new home builder to outfit the whole community with solar, Powerwall, and chargers. Now, y'all said in the article that this was a solar panel, but in the picture, that looks like those solar roof grid things.
I think that's just a picture, though. But it says specifically, if you read through it, you'll see specifically what it says. There's going to be solar panels.
Yeah. Oh, no, wait. Homeowners are seeing the value of producing their own energy, and that value could add on day one of the new home instead of retrofitting them with solar panels after they were already built. Alset eHome Inc. It's a U.S.-based property developer and subsidiary of Allset eHome International.
Ray.
Yeah.
Read the name of that company backwards, Allset.
Tesla. What?
Wait a second. What's happening? So Tesla is giving panels to Tesla, essentially.
No, to Allset. They're Allset.
Oh, sorry. Allset International or whatever they're called.
Yeah, these Tesla products will be installed in 20 brand new single-family homes in the North Park community in Porter, Texas. In addition, these 20 homes, Allset, adds 10 more homes under contract in the same community, scheduled to close at the end of this month. Moving forward, there are plans to acquire additional 70 units in the Houston area, targeting a total of 100 e-home deliveries. So it says the Tesla PV solar panels, power walls, and EV chargers.
Yeah.
Tesla PV solar. Have you used PV solar panels?
No.
I haven't either.
But it does say...
I want to see what they look like. Yo.
Ooh, Allset eHome International shares rise 41% on Tesla supply agreement. Oh.
No, this Tesla solar panel looks like a roof. I think that represented photo was more accurate than we're giving it credit for.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm looking right now, the Tesla solar panel review 2021 on this old house.
Well, if Tesla owns Allset, which we're confirming the conspiracy or whatever it is, then they can give him whatever. By the way, it says a whole community, but it's not. It's 20 houses total. Right now is the first agreement.
But isn't that the size of the community?
Oh, there you go. Maybe, yeah. So
there are hundreds,
an entire community of 2 homes.
20 homes. This is interesting. So we have Roush Coleman Homes here, and they are the leader in affordable home projects. There are hundreds of new homes planned in Allset eHomes 2 communities. On top of it, they partnered with NVR and Roush Coleman Homes, 2 of the biggest home builders in the U.S. projects. If this partnership is successful, it could be tempted to expand to other communities. Interesting. So this article is on Electrek, Electrek. Wow, my brain did loops when I was trying to spell that. Electrek.
I can't.
Electric.co. And was contributed by producer Matt. So thank you, Matt. Okay, so we have Tesla coming up, partnering with development to do new homes. So new homes are being built. We have a CEO saying, we're still investing in property. I don't see a big problem here on the rentals. We have mortgage rates starting to go up a little bit after the Fed Chairman Powell's comments.
But nothing crazy.
Unemployment is going down.
Yeah. We
do have a lot of people aging in place, so less boomer inventory hitting the market. Mortgage payments are still increasing due to the prices. The FHA is easing the requirement to let students in, and Zillow is paying $84,000 on your house value for. So is the market healthy? This is the part where everybody that's in Clubhouse is currently listening. If you have an opinion, if you're a real estate agent and you want to tell me if the market is healthy or unhealthy, I want to know your opinion. But first, Dan, while they're deciding whether or not the market is healthy or unhealthy, can you please give me a rundown of this article?
Yeah, if I have
this is the last one we're going to cover today, y'all.
All
right. This is your time to shine.
Now, this is from Logan. Now, how do we say his last name? Motoshami.
Yeah, I got to look it up to pronounce it. It is
Motoshami.
Logan Motoshami.
Yes. Now he's in Clubhouse. Can we ping him?
Maybe. Let me see.
I don't know how to ping, but I feel like you can ping on Clubhouse. Anyway, you can tag him in. But he wrote this article, and he's been on the show a couple different times, and he's always awesome because he stays in the space of stats and facts. He's like, I write the most boring articles on the planet. There's no over alliteration. There's no gotcha headlines. And in fact, he has a whole thing that he goes off about what does he call them, Ray? The crash bros.
Yeah.
And the gotcha headlines, which Mario agrees with me about the YouTubers driving him crazy with the whole market crash thumbnails and all that stuff. So, but this is kind of the first time he's said something kind of negative about the market, right?
Dun dun dun.
It was really interesting to me. And by the way, this is on Housing Wire exclusive content. So if you're not a member, you got to become a member, which we did today. So existing home sales
just for Logan,
huh?
Just for Logan.
Yeah, I did. I know. We love the guy. And I mean, the kind of content that he gives us on this show is absolutely amazing. So, but unhealthy housing market continues. And then he asked the question, what happens if the scenario continues? So how he writes oftentimes is he writes from his point of view. So as I read it, understand that it's Logan speaking. So almost 3 months ago, I wrote that based on the year-over-year growth in purchase applications, the housing market should have a few existing home sales under 5.84 million. At the time, he said, this is a quote from himself. He's quoting himself. The rule of thumb I am using, remember, this is Logan speaking, I am using for 2021 is that existing home sales, if they're doing good, should be trending between 5.8 and 6.2 million. This to me would be considered a good year for housing. This also means that we should have some prints above 6.2 million, like we have already had below 5.8, which hasn't happened yet. We ended 2020 with 5.6 million existing home sales, which was roughly 130,000 more than 2017 levels. Year over year, comps for 2021 are a mess because the Rona made the 2020 data so crazy. This just means that we need to make some adjustments in the data to account for the Rona,
which we've been begging for people to do.
Right, which is why we love him, because he's kind of doing it for us. The existing home sales data is one area where adjustments are necessary. So I don't. Does Matt have? Can he get into the article? Did we get it?
Matt, do you have the whole article up?
Because it's got a chart for the viewers if they want to see it.
Ooh, there you go. I went ahead and put it up, man.
And here's the chart. This goes back all the way to 1999.
Wow.
This is existing home sales back 21, 22 years. How cool is that?
You got to describe the chart for the audio listeners.
Yeah. So for the audio listeners, it's got millions on the left of the chart, and then along the bottom of the chart, it's the year all the way back to 99. And in 99, it was roughly about 5.5 million home sales.
Yeah.
It peaked obviously in 2006, 2007, went way down, all the way down to the lowest in 2000. Matt's drawing.
Thanks, Matt, for drawing on the chart so people could clearly see.
Yes, what I'm talking about, even for the listeners on Clubhouse and the podcast later on. Yeah. But in 2009 was the bottom, and then it actually hit another bottom at the end of 2010. It looks like going into 2011.
Yeah,
at what does that say? I can't read that. 3.45 million.
Yep.
So my eyes still do work, and then it slowly ticked up with some V recoveries.
Yep.
All the way through 2019, and then hit a hard dip for the Rona, and then now it's only gone back up, but it's trended off in the last month or so.
Yeah.
So it's gone back down to 2017 levels, like he says in the market. So
Ray, if we want to annualized rate of monthly sales, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily new construction or home builds or something like that, but that's how many sales that we have per month.
Right. But they're trending. Now I'll go back to the article, but they're trending in the wrong way right now. Sales, right?
Right.
So remember that total existing home sales ended 2020 at 5.6 million. That was pre-cycle highs in demand, but not a blowout, as this was only 130,000 more than 2017 levels. Every single sales print this year has been higher than what we ended 2020. Today's 5.8 million existing home sales print is slightly better than I thought it would be, meaning Logan, not Dan. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm just reading what Logan said. According to the National Association of Realtors, total existing home sales completed transactions that included single-family, townhomes, condominiums, and co-ops that dropped almost a full percentage point from April to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 5.8 million in May. The housing market's existing sales in total climbed year over year, up 44.6% a year ago.
Yeah.
So He gives you a good tip here too. For your sanity, I recommend abiding by my rule, meaning Logan's rule, to ignore all year-over-year data for 2021, which he said on the show.
Yeah.
We likely will need to extend skipping a year-over-year data into the early parts of 2022, as well as the same for the same reasons. And then there's a NAR research. So let's see. I want to skip forward a little bit past the stats and facts to where he says, here we go. If you happen to listen to one of the many housing bubble crash trolling groups that are clogging up the internet again, be mindful of one of their favorite gimmicks. They assume that you don't know about the seasonality in purchase applications. They will trick their listeners into believing that housing demand is collapsing because the June number is falling. So essentially, he wrote a little bit of a clickbaity headline.
Yeah, good on him though. People need to read his stuff because he's more on point than any other economist that I've found lately.
100%. I really, he's always dead on. So if you want that, it is Housing Wire Plus, so you have to pay for it, but it's great content. And then all the other tons of free content that Housing Wire gives out. But with all that, Ray, and to the viewers and the listeners on Clubhouse as well, what do you think? Is this an unhealthy market?
No, my opinion is it's fairly healthy. It's just a seller market. It could use more inventory. Historically they said whenever we get lower than 2 months of supply, the builders have trouble keeping up with supply. And that turns out that's true. That's right. And the first time in my life, we were less than 2 months of supply. But if there wasn't so much equity in everyone's home right now, then I would probably have a different opinion than what I have. If people who are in forbearance wouldn't be able to sell their property and make money on it and pay off the forbearance, then I think you would have a situation in which this could end really terribly.
And even if they had to sell below market value because their house is in a little rougher shape, or it's in that lower third of the market that we need so much, the investors would just come in and scoop up those, which right now, keep it going and then give other people homes to buy. So I 100% agree with you.
I feel like this is just as healthy as a market that, is a 6 month supply and favors buyers. It's just favoring one side over the other. I don't see anything in it, due to the lending constraints being tightened and banks kind of managing things differently. The most unhealthy part of it for me that doesn't tend to make sense is the lumber prices, knowing that those lumber producers, the people that actually grow the lumber on their land, those prices aren't going to them. And it's strictly at the timber mills and at the distribution level. That seems a little shady. And
which we learned a week or two when we covered that article. It doesn't go to the actual growers.
Which I knew, but that's because we have a real small timber operation in South Arkansas. So it could be just because we're so small. But turns out that's not, we're one of many who's saying the same thing. And for example, we bought a piece of land that only had pulpwood on it, and pulpwood is just like the stuff they make particle board out of, right? It's not great wood. You're not going to make a piece of furniture out of some great pulpwood. So we bought this land with it on it. It was kind of a trash cut. And so we just cut it all and we were going to plant better wood on it. So we cut it all. And as soon as we bought the land, the price of pulpwood started going up. And then we sold the land at the peak of pulpwood and wound up paying for more than the land. Peak pulpwood moment. And wound up paying for the land with one cut. And we could also reseed and everything and be in the money with it. So that was great. But that's an example of when the price of that went up, it going straight down to those people that are growing the timber. And that's not currently happening, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. So why are prices going up if they're not having to raise their prices? Why is it going to the mills and the yards, not the people growing it?
They say it's a bottleneck of, creating the inventory. But then we talked about last week how those people that were hoarding the wood are, jumping on the market with it, trying to get rid of it now. So I think that's the most unhealthy part of the housing market is the supply of that's affecting builders who are trying to increase the amount of supply, and it's pushing out projects that instead of taking 4 to 5 months like it used to, now they're taking 8 months in some projects to a year. So I think that's the biggest issue. Otherwise, I feel like it's healthy. People They have money. They have money to put down. There's more people going towards conventional loans than I've ever seen.
Unemployment's coming down.
Unemployment's coming down from a worldwide pandy, and unemployment is sitting around full employment at 5.8%. So, so no, I think it's pretty healthy. Mario Flores, he says, agree, Ray and Dan, 100%. So I'd love to get some opinions from those of you who are listening right now in Clubhouse. If you have a second to jump up, what's your market like? Is it healthy or unhealthy? If you're watching in YouTube or Facebook and you have a comment on that, feel free to join. But Dan, while we're waiting on anyone else to jump in, what do you think, man?
I would just say it's not ideal, but it's still healthy. I think, if we're counting indicators of what a healthy or unhealthy market is, I'd say it's healthy. It's not ideal. You would want it to be a little more flat, for buyers and sellers. But the concerning thing to me to go back to the sellers is why more sellers aren't selling, and how to get them kind of off that fence. But again, I don't think it's unhealthy per se. And I would never purport to throw out a headline like, is the market going to crash? Is the market going to tank? Like
we totally do that with our headlines.
right. Like, well, we do it with the Zillow ones, but like Susie Orman did, Grant Cardone. Was it Grant Cardone?
Well, they're saying that so the difference is we're asking the question, then we answer it with level-headed, right? They're asking the question and then telling you the falsehood that they believe it would crash, and then the reasons just don't make sense economically. So
they don't make sense at all. And these are from financial advisors, but if you quote unquote financial advisors, but it turns out if you throw out this information and get people to click on your links, it's going to benefit your business, right? So,
yeah. I've invited a couple of people up to speak. We have Matt and Andy. Andy, I'm going to come to you first. Andy Rose, tell us who you are, what market you work, and what is your opinion of this real estate market?
Before we do Andy, I apologize, but Andy Rose does have a thorn.
There you go, buddy. All right, so tell us about this market. What do you think, Andy?
I don't know if I can answer that now. This is Andy Rose. I work, I'm a licensed agent in Georgia and Florida. I work Metro Atlanta and the Florida Panhandle, two completely different markets. I've been catching what you guys have said. I've had a couple of phone calls, but my opinion of this market is that it's nuts. I listed a house yesterday morning. I've already got 30-something showings and 6 offers in, and it's just going bonkers, and everybody's begging me for 15 minutes to get in.
Wow. So you have 15-minute showing windows, 30 showings. So your market is still going nuts, but you don't have an opinion on if it's healthy or not.
How healthy is crazy. I guess that's the question, and the way I would angle the question. I think it is healthy overall, because we do have a really healthy demand from the buyers. Yeah, we have limited supply, but that's natural economics, basic economics, supply and demand. I know I deal with some buyers and investors that say, hey, I'll just wait for the market to correct or crash or the bubble to burst. And I try to explain to them, like, this is wildly different than what we had before, because we had no demand, high supply, and rising prices for some weird reason, and horrible loan products that we don't even have anymore. So it's wildly different. Some will talk about forbearances and possible foreclosures. Because the demand is so high, I don't think those foreclosures are going to go and dip down very low, if low at all, because there's such a high demand. Plus, we have these BlackRock and all these big institutional buyers that are buying out rental properties. They're going to pay top dollar for those properties from foreclosure. So your average buyer, your owner occupant, likely isn't going to get that property, or many of them.
What we talked about it yesterday on the pre-show show. Which company was it that bought? I forget exactly what it was, but they bought a company that has, was it 14,000 or 17,000 homes in their portfolio?
Yeah.
So just kind of to further Andy's point, but yeah. Can I ask this question?
Yeah.
what if we were flipped? So no, because Andy kind of mentioned it, kind of made me think, what if we were flipped? So enough listings or tons of listings and no buyer demand.
Then you would say it's healthy for a buyer because they could get a great deal, right? And people are buying properties lower than list price, but it's
and then more people could sell and they'd know where they're going. They could easily find a house. They could negotiate.
But then you'd hear all the arguments like, well, don't buy a house because you could see that you're not going to get your equity out of it. And then, it sounds ridiculous in the market that we're in now.
That's why I'm asking that question, devil's advocate a little bit.
I think we can still get our equity out of it. It's just going to take a little bit longer. One thing on us, at least since I've been a real estate agent for 9 years, is at the time that people stay in houses has been a lot longer than it used to be. So I think the growth of equity may take a little longer, especially because of this current market, but it'll happen eventually.
There you go. I would agree with that. All right, Matt LaMarche, let's go to you, man. What do you think of this market? Is it healthy or unhealthy? How are you feeling?
So I'm still driving, but I'll be real quick. I think it is healthy for the sellers. I feel like in Atlanta, we've gotten a little bit of a lull here. I think ever since Memorial Day hit, a lot of people have kind of hit the pause button, or at least paused for a moment. I know a lot of my buyers have been on vacation, had kids in camp, and so I feel like summer's a bit of a different time, but I still have a lot of really, really active buyers.
Yeah, it's interesting. We kind of noticed a little bit of a dip in activity, but not much. We also noticed, I think I talked about it, can't remember if it was on the pre-show or if I talked about it last year or last week. But instead of getting like 20 and 17 offers, we're getting 5 to 7 offers on most properties. But those 5 to 7 are still all over list price.
Yeah, that was yesterday. That's exactly how you said it. Because we, instead of getting 50 offers, we're getting 20 or down to 10 to 12. Or in LA, it's getting less and less offers. But those offers are now quality
and home prices are going up. I mean, people are listing them higher and higher.
Yeah. If you get 25 offers, chances are almost guaranteed that you're not getting 25 solid. You're going to get about half of them that are like, I'm just going to throw it out there. So maybe I get a counter. Maybe they, like my story, maybe they, whatever it is, so they're just throwing out there, or they have a really horrible agent that does not have their finger on the pulse of this market and just writes a horribly poorly written offer.
Yep. Okay, we have 3 or 4 more commenters here. Let me get to Jen. Jen, tell us who you are, what market you work, and what do you think your market is? It healthy, unhealthy?
Hey everyone, Jen Mabry, Portland, Oregon, solo agent since 2004. Our market is pretty good. We're still the cheapest city on the West Coast. So we're getting a ton of California folks. At the same time, we're losing a lot to Iowa, Montana, that stuff. But
Idaho.
We seem to, in the past couple weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks, little bit of slowdown. We're seeing 10 to 12 offers as opposed to 20, 25 offers on places. I seem to feel a little buyer fatigue all across the board, and that's at all price points.
100%.
Either that, or wondering if it could be that agents are sort of figuring out better pricing strategies in this crazy market, learning to deal with, appraisal waivers and all the stuff that we haven't traditionally had to deal with. So I'm feeling pretty good about it, at least in Portland. Thanks so much, everyone. Ray.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show. And that's kind of what we see too, is it's, I would echo that, seeing some buyer fatigue, seeing different pricing strategies, and also seeing that, some agents are informing their buyers, hey, if you want to buy a house in the, $300,000 range, we need to look at around 280 and under if you're going to have a shot at those. So
in some markets, 180 and under.
So Scap, you're going to have a different perspective. Mark is an appraiser. His name is Scap on Clubhouse if you want to find him. Tell us what you think about the market. Do you feel that this is healthy?
This market is completely unhealthy, in my opinion. And I'm just going to throw it out there from my perspective, only because I feel like I guess I kind of look at it this way. When you start putting junk food and stuff in your body, you become unhealthy. When you start feeding yourself a bunch of crap. And I felt like this market was kind of created that way due to a lot of undue stimulus out there. I mean, it wasn't really created on its own. You know, COVID obviously was a factor in it. Then the Fed's pumping money into the system and reducing rates to keep things going during the COVID pandemic. So I feel like it was almost, in my opinion, kind of like artificially, made. And I just don't see it. I see way too many offers out there. People just taking money out left and right of their savings accounts, of their, their IRAs, just to go and buy a house right now. I feel like a lot of these people would have waited had it been maybe a more stable, a stable market with more listings out there on the market, a little bit more competitive in that respect for both buyers and sellers. I just feel right now that there's just too many undue influences and undue stimulus that were generated because of the pandemic that kind of created this market. Now, to me, I don't know when it's going to stop. But I mean, that's just my opinion.
Well, good. I mean, that's a good dissenting opinion. I like it. And I don't disagree with you fully. I think some of the decisions some buyers are making may be a little careless or reckless, but at the same time, if they don't buy that house now, we can potentially know based on history that the price of that same home is going to be more next year, and the rate at which they have to borrow to purchase that now more expensive home next year may also be higher. So I can see people kind of rushing for what is the perceived deal, even though prices are, what do we say? The average person gained $33,400 in equity is what we said last year.
Yep.
So I would only counter your point, Scap, because I don't disagree with you wholly. I think you raised some phenomenal points, but I would only disagree with you in saying that the future pricing, which we can't perfectly predict, but based on history of housing, the future pricing of that house is going to be more expensive, because not only is the house going to be more expensive, but the money to borrow is going to be more expensive because of the stimulus and things like that you had mentioned. So I
couldn't. And I completely agree with you on that point. On that point, I will totally agree with you on that. I just feel that, had the pandemic not happened, prior to the pandemic, things were moving along pretty smoothly. Values were increasing at a pretty, decent rate. And then after, once the pandemic hit, and then, obviously money's being pumped in from the feds and everything, lowering those rates. I mean, it was just like, it was just a race, from everybody out there to take advantage of the low rates and go out there, which benefited more sellers, obviously benefiting the sellers out there. But I definitely agree with you on the point that you made there.
So you're admitting you're wrong.
I don't know if everybody.
Sorry. I'm kidding.
No, he's not. He's an appraiser. He's never going to admit he's wrong, right, Scap?
No. I mean, I'll admit when I'm wrong when I feel like I'm wrong, but most of the time, I will keep that to myself and definitely tell myself I am absolutely correct all the time.
Right.
Nice. Well done. Thanks for joining the show, man. I appreciate it. Melanie, let's go to you, Ron, Antonio, and then we will call it a show. So I'm going to turn hand raising off, but thank you guys for joining us here. All right, Melanie, what do you think? Is your market healthy or unhealthy? How do you feel overall?
I think it's healthy. I think the slowdowns in the areas that have slowdowns are what we expect at this time of year. We generally have a slowdown at the very beginning of summer. I would expect in the next couple of weeks for it to ramp up in the residential market. The second home market is slower for lack of inventory, but I think it's still healthy. Interestingly enough, in the median to lower price range, we have properties sitting on the market that should be residential, but they're pricing them as if they're second homes, and they don't have the quality, the location, or anything that's going to make them attractive, like even thinking about second homes. So I think that's interesting. I have an interesting thought that struck me when you guys were talking today. We're talking about a lack of homes. Are we actually maybe seeing when we lost builders in the 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s, maybe that's the inventory that we're really missing right now that would be resales, because none of that came through at that time.
Yeah, I think that's back in the day when you had a pickup truck and a cell phone and you could be a home builder. There's far less of those, 5 to 10 homes a year guys. And I do agree with you. That is probably attributing to some of the lack of inventory. But we also know that as soon as the market got rough, those guys went belly up. So I think the builders that we do have are far stronger, but they're also less willing to take the risk. So maybe not only are we missing the contractors that would just throw up homes as soon as they could, but I think we're seeing some apprehension on the builder side to where they're walking those lines very carefully, trying to figure out exactly what they can build and know what they can sell without overextending themselves in case something happens in the future, they're not in trouble again. So I would agree with your assessment there, Melanie. I think that's a big issue.
Great points.
All right, let's go to Ron. Ron. Oh, by the way, Melanie is in Michigan. What part of Michigan are you in, Melanie?
She's in the right here in the mitten. Or is it here? I think it's here.
I'm in the. So if you think about the mitten, I'm on the pinky side of the mitten, about the knuckle point, but I run up and down the lakeshore of the pinky side of the mitten.
So that's for the audio listeners. For the viewers, I'm showing you my hand up, and there you go.
There you go. That's how you know where someone is.
I never even thought about it before, but Michigan apparently looks like a mitten, and
there you go.
So that's where they say if you're from there, you just say, "What part of the mitten are you from?" I'm from the thumb of the mitten.
It's easy to know where you are. All right, let's go. Ron Bruno, how are you? Tell us what market you work in and if you think this market's healthy or not.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I'm a residential lender based in Dallas, Texas, licensed in California and Texas, and I think we have a supply imbalance. That's really what it's all about. I do see some good things on the horizon. Lumber prices came down on Monday. It was $897 for a 2x12 pine versus $1,600 back in May. So that's good news from the standpoint of builders going out, building more supply. But at the end of the day, what I'm advising my clients is we either are going to work together on reducing or removing contingencies so you can compete. So that's either the loan contingency, identifying the appraisal gap, having all that ready to go when we make our offers, or looking outside into those particular cities outside the urban core where there's lots of inventory. So there's plenty of places. I actually created a map showing in the various areas in Texas where people could buy homes in DFW, Austin, and Houston, and San Antonio, where there's plenty of inventory based off of the regular general population. Either that or wait till the homes come around where we have a little bit more supply sometime next year. So those are my thoughts.
That's interesting. If you look at the yearly chart for lumber, it kind of eerily is similar to Bitcoin, which is kind of weird, actually. So I'm serious. Look at it. I'm looking at it now. Let's see what the 5-year. The 5-year even looks more like Bitcoin. So maybe lumber is tied to Bitcoin. This is the conspiracy. Dogecoin crashed, by the way. All right. So the last number, as he mentioned, it was in the 800s. It's 866.4. Last week we covered it when it was down to 1,200 from 1,670 was the high. Yeah. It is currently 866.4. Now, in the last year, the low that it has been was $423.4. So that tells you we're still double.
That's still 100% above that.
But it's only 100%.
Right. When it was, wasn't it 2,000% or something crazy at some point? And by the way, those numbers that we're saying are per 1,000 board foot or something?
1,000 board foot. Yeah. So
do the math.
I appreciate it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so back when my wife and I decided to move forward with our contract on our new home back in April 2020, lumber prices were $260. So just to give you perspective of what's going on, it's really wild. So we're 4 times the amount where we were last year.
That's crazy. All right, well, let's go to Antonio. I think he's going to have a very different perspective from us, for us. Antonio Barbosa, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah. Hi, Ray. How are you? And thanks for calling me into the room and inviting me to speak. I just wanted to listen because I don't know if I can contribute to the market there, but I could talk about my market. And
tell everybody where you're from, too, because you're one of the listeners that makes this show worldwide.
Thank you. I'm out in Portugal. And the market here, well, it's not so much different from you guys in the sense where we do have a lack of inventory. We do. There is a lot of properties for sale. But just like Melanie mentioned, the quality properties, great locations, what our buyers look for, there is actually low inventory on that. So when usually between, say, 45 to 60 days, it gets on the market, it does get sold. And the prices here within the last, even through this pandemic that we had, was rather a soft lockdown. And even from last year, prices here, it's either going up steadily always and maintaining 3 to 6%, and in due part because of the also like you guys as well, the not only the cost of materials for building and labor here is qualified labor is paid for, so reflects on the prices. But it's amazing on how the market, in my opinion, just keeps going up and up and up even throughout these times. Back in the last low market, like everyone felt, was really around 2011 after the world, what we know, and pretty much then it hit a bubble. And I think prices, and that's what I think happened, and it was a good thing because they stabilized, right? Whereas in like for example, like in the center of Lisbon, you're looking at like a 100 square meter apartment. You're looking at 12,000 euros a square meter, so 1.2 million. And that's just not. Unfortunately, it's just not accessible to many Portuguese buyers. So it opens up the market for the international, and that's what we focus on a lot. That is our market, 70% of it, 80%, and the national market. I'm afraid in September how things are going to work out because of the moratoriums until then. And I would see it as a good sign where the banks are not, they themselves don't have a lot of inventory. And so in September, we'll see how it goes. And but as far as the national market, even because of the low interest rates, I mean, we're talking here like I'm working on. There's two clients that right now at the moment that we're getting their loans approval, and even they're at like below 2% interest rates, so it's very attractive for it. So yeah, in a nutshell,
Wow.
that's here in Portugal, and but it's definitely I think over the years, the next 3 years, we'll see much more buyers coming in. And because of just the way that the government also helps out with just a lot of incentives for foreign investors, and the facility of renovating old, like just dilapidated buildings in a center
Yeah.
of Lisbon, Porto, in a bigger region. So a lot of investment going on here. So a lot more new construction in that end, but requalifying older buildings that, just that. And I think that's the way to go. But yeah, in a nutshell.
It
Thank you.
almost sounds kind of like part of our second home market, actually, where you're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of the locals in those market, not purchasing them, but people from outside of that area coming in and then purchasing those properties. It sounds very similar to that, actually. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antonio. Thanks for joining the show today. I appreciate it, man.
And I would
Thank you,
assume
Ray. Thank
Tom Tizak, who's over on Hawaii, in Hawaii, he hasn't been on the show for a minute, but I would assume his market is kind of seeing the same thing, because remember, he got hit pretty hard
Yeah.
during the Rona, but then it's been recovering for the last couple of months for him. He was saying last time he was commenting on the show, so I'd be interested to hear. But just FYI, guys, Portugal is over attached to Spain. I already knew that, but just letting you guys know where
Just in case
Portugal
you
is.
guys didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't Google it just to make sure I knew where it was while Antonio was speaking. I'm just saying so our listeners and viewers know where it is. It's not where you may have thought it was, but yeah. So
that's so funny.
But how cool is that? We're not only getting national kind of reports and market updates, we're getting international over in Portugal. That's killer.
Yep. And thanks so much for everyone that joined the show today. And thank you for the extended discussion about your markets in particular. It sounds like most of the real estate agents are thinking it's healthy. SCAP, we had one good dissenting voice that brought some great points from an appraiser's perspective.
That wouldn't ever admit he's wrong.
The lender that joined us also said that he felt like it was pretty healthy. But I think we also have to be careful as real estate agents not to say it's healthy just because we want people to buy and sell properties.
Exactly.
I mean, part of the honesty in what we do is telling people exactly what's happening in the marketplace so that they can make the best decision for them. And in reality, I was talking with an agent the other day, and she said, how are you informing your buyers of what to offer? And I told her about, how we get, I tell my buyers, make a walkaway offer. If you found out your friend put in an offer for $100 more and got the house, you'd say, wow, they overpaid, right? You don't want to ever have that regret of wishing you had put in more. You also don't want to have the regret of wishing you didn't pay so much. So putting in walkaway offers, I think, is a strong way to do it. But in that discussion, she said, well, what about, them overpaying for this house? And I said, well, in whose opinion? If you're an investor, that's a different situation because you need those numbers to work. You got to have the hard data. You got to look at all that. And you've got to make sure that you're going to come out right and you have a good return on investment. If you're a homeowner, the return on investment for a lot of people is that you get to spend a portion of your life in that home. And it's not necessarily about making an extra 1 to 2% or trying to get an extra 1 to 2% off the purchase price. It's about your kids growing up in the room that you want them to grow up in. It's about being in the neighborhood that you want to be in. It's about, and those have more, I guess you could say, intangible benefits that may not be readily recognizable on the spreadsheet that is the purchase of the home, but is recognizable in your mental health and your well-being and your community and your friends and family. So if you're out there and you're thinking about buying a house and you see headlines about unhealthy or healthy, and you say headlines about the market crashing, and you hear Susie Orman and Grant talk about the market crashing all the time like they do and mispredicting it by 80%, which they've done, then clearly maybe you should also sit back and say, why are we buying a house? Are we buying for an investment? Because that's a different issue than if you're buying as an owner occupant looking to spend a large portion of your life in a shelter. So, and with that, Dan, where can people find you?
DLudwigRocks, DLUDWIGROCKS. Go over and follow me. You can follow me here on Clubhouse if you're listening now. Give me a follow. I don't always follow back, but I think I always follow back. I don't remember. I don't know the
Clubhouse follow back is interesting because it unlocks other rooms that people get into. So
yeah. And
if
then
I watching on Clubhouse, follow everyone that came up to speak to, because those are some good people.
Well, and it's interesting to see when you get pinged or when you get notified what rooms they're in. You can go listen for a little bit, and it's been a really fun app to be a part of, because when I'm driving, you can just hop into a room and learn a bunch of stuff over the half an hour drive you have. But anyway, give me a follow here on Clubhouse, but over on Instagram as well. I don't post a lot of real estate stuff, but I posted a great dad joke yesterday. Great dad joke yesterday. And they're in my stories, so you got to go follow to see them. But one of my best dad jokes, I think, ever.
Nice. And you can find me at Ray Zorback, RAYZORBACK, wherever Razorbacks are sold out, which is right now on Instagram. So hit me up on Instagram, send me a message, let me know you found the show. I appreciate it if you share the show whenever you see it on Facebook or YouTube. You can always, so this is at the very end of the show, Matt. You might want to put this somewhere in the show when you do the editing, but you can always go down into the description on YouTube, and we have all of the links to the time period. So if you
bantered the whole show and
the whole show of banter, if you want to skip the entire show and go right to the end, that's how you do it. So there's and I think we should probably put an additional link, Matt, for like the Clubhouse discussion that we had today of everyone's market. So we'll have a timestamp there. Just click on the timestamp and zoom wherever you want to go. We also, if you subscribe and hit the bell, you'll be notified of whenever we do a live. You'll also be notified of whenever we do a Bearded Men of Real Estate chop. And the chop, play on words there. But the chop is also just a segment of the show that we release each one of these articles or discussions separately, so that if you happen to miss the show, you can be updated one by one in bite-sized portions and see our lovely bearded faces on the YouTubes. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Last one, Ray. If you don't have time to sit here for the hour and a half that we're live and comment along with us, we are a podcast, so you can either go to any, wherever your favorite podcasts are streamed, or you can say to your smart speaker right now, smart speaker, play the Bearded Men of Real Estate Show podcast. I don't want to trigger a bunch of people's smart speakers. But you can say, play the Bearded Men of Real Estate Show podcast, and they will play the most recent episode. So if you have time, you're driving around, you can listen in the background on those. We greatly appreciate it.
So thanks everybody for joining us.
Bye. Love you guys.
Bye.
Conspiracy confirmed. Time. All set is Tesla. Bye.
All set is Tesla.